Goat on here once again. This time I'm going to show you the Thrustmaster 4 HOTAS that I've been using with the latest update for Valkyrie. Okay, so on the left here, this is actually the throttle. You push it all the way forward, you boost, pull it back, you brake. And you've got these rudder pedals here. You've actually got L1, L2 and R2 here, and then all the standard buttons like triangle, X, square and circle. Now I've jigged things around a bit here. I'm actually currently using these pedals on the top for roll. Space Cat wants to get involved here. She likes the new HOTAS. On the right hand side you've got the main stick. You've got usual buttons. Now this is missile or secondary fire. Here is actually what you use to communicate with the comms wheel, and this is your countermeasure. And then coming around to the front, you can see you've got your normal trigger button. Just around the other side, this R3 here is actually what activates your comms wheel. Now overall, there's a few different planes of motion you've got with the stick. To start off with, left and right was actually roll. For most pilots that makes sense, but in terms of Valkyrie, that left this for yaw, which is a much smaller range of motion. So I actually swapped it over to start off with, and it's quite natural for flying, but in the long run I ended up having to swap over to these pedals on this side, simply because I was accidentally twisting whilst turning and rolling around the place, and then trying to go left and right at the same time is actually quite uncomfortable. But overall, I now prefer this flight method to using the actual controller. It just seems to offer much smoother levels of flight, because all of the controls you need to control yourself are at your fingertips, rather than having to swap hand movements around or sometimes rearrange your grip. It just makes a much bigger difference. There's a few other things I want to show you, what it's like in game. I'll show you some game footage and talk about that in a second. Okay, so here I am, just in the test arena, cruising around using the HOTAS joystick to practice my aim and to show off some manoeuvring. Now you can see straight away, combine and roll your pitch, it's just loads easier. You get like really beautiful movement, really fluid, flying around. Now the only thing I would point out here is you can see I'm actually having some difficulty with fine-tune aiming, and this is where I was asking on the forums for a little bit more control over that level of sensitivity. When I'm making like hardly any movement on the joystick, but it just seems to wobble all over the place dead sharply. If I could just turn that down a touch, it would smooth out the whole experience. But in terms of actually being able to fly and run rings around stuff, you can see here I'm not hitting any obstacles. I'm turning and banking really easily. Just have full control over the spaceships, and it's so easy to actually lock on, use your countermeasures, do absolutely everything you need to all at the same time. It just makes you seemingly more lethal using the flight stick, at least in my case. And I would actually say my whole experience of Valkyrie is greatly improved just by having the flight stick. And you really feel like you're in control of a spaceship, and you feel like an absolute unstoppable legend. It's amazing.